All right, this is the Master Review Part 3. This will cover numbers 22 through 30. So on 22, list the determinants of aggregate demand. Remember, aggregate demand can be calculated two ways, but more often than not, we use total expenditure, which is C plus IS plus G plus exports minus imports. So what is going to shift aggregate demand? Well, anything that would shift any of these. That's the short answer. The longer answer can be found on page 176 of your book. But expectations, if you expect the price of things to go up in the future, if you expect a recession to come, you're going to spend less now. If you expect to get a job in the future, maybe you're going to spend more now. Wealth, if people are doing better, they spend more. Right now, the wealth of the economy is very poor due to this coronavirus. So the wealth is going down, which is causing consumption to go down, investment spending to go down. Government spending is going way up right now, but that's different. Size of physical capital. If businesses are investing in new buildings, in new inventory, that adds to investment spending. 4, fiscal policy. We'll dive into this much more, but fiscal policy directly ties to government spending. If the government spends more, GDP or aggregate demand goes up. If they spend less, aggregate demand goes down. The other one with fiscal policy is decreasing taxes. If you decrease taxes, you give people more disposable income. And this part's really important. AP test is a stickler on this part, but if people have more disposable income, they can consume more, which causes the other one is monetary policy. Monetary policy has to do with the money supply and changing interest rates. We'll dive into that more later. 23, distinguish between changes in aggregate demand and a change in price level causing movement along the aggregate demand. Change in aggregate demand is if any one of these 5 things happen. Anything causes this whole curve to shift. Change in price level causing movement along, this happens from a shift in short-run aggregate supply. If something causes the short-run aggregate supply to move, you move to a new point on the aggregate demand. This is very similar to what we were talking about back on numbers 9 through 11. List the reasons why aggregate demand is downward sloping. I don't expect them to test this, but the 2 reasons are the wealth effect and the interest rate effect. I definitely don't expect them to cover the interest rate effect on the test, so we'll talk about the wealth effect. But the wealth effect is simply saying, if the price of stuff goes up, you can buy less, right? If you have a fixed income, you can only spend that income. If the price of stuff goes up, you can buy less. When the price goes up, you buy less. When the price of stuff goes down, you can automatically buy more. You have the potential to buy more because stuff costs less. 25, list the determinants of aggregate supply. In general, the aggregate supply shifts if the cost of production goes up, or if the cost of production changes, I should say. The actual 4 determinants are commodities, such as electricity or oil. If the price of oil goes up, that is an input for most businesses. Then the cost of production goes up and the aggregate supply shifts left. Nominal wages. This is the big one when the economy self-corrects. Another way of saying that is in the long run. If a problem says something about in the long run, or the government's going to do nothing and we're going to let it self-correct, nominal wages are going to change. When nominal wages go down, the cost of production goes down, and short-run aggregate supply shifts to the right. Nominal wages go up, cost of production goes up, and short-run aggregate supply shifts to the left. So nominal wages is a big one, probably the biggest. Productivity is another one. If your workers become more productive, you can make more for the same amount of money. And the last one is expectations about inflation. If you expect inflation to come, that's going to increase the cost of your production. You're going to produce less. If you expect inflation to go down, that's going to decrease the cost of production, and your short run aggregate supply will shift left. 26 is the same as 23. If any one of these four things happen, the whole short run aggregate supply curve shifts. If aggregate demand changes, you just move to a new point on the short run aggregate supply curve. Explain and demonstrate the shape of the aggregate supply curve in the short run and the long run. In the short run, it's upward sloping because short run, it is upward sloping because prices are sticky. In the short term, prices are sticky. This means that as inflation goes up, or as the price of stuff goes up, businesses aren't incentivized to change people's income in the short run. In the long run, it is vertical because in the long run, prices are no longer sticky. Prices will change. This has to do with the nominal wages. In the long run, it's vertical, and it represents the production possibility curve. We can only make so much with our given work resources. Cool. 28. I don't expect this to show up on the AP test. It might show up on my final, but the question would have to be specific. If the problem says that the short run aggregate supply curve is flat, then changing aggregate demand won't change the price level. If it's upward sloping, it will change price level. And if it's vertical and change in aggregate demand, won't change GDP. You could draw these out and prove this, but if it's flat, changing aggregate demand will only change GDP. It won't change the price level. If it's upward sloping, like we've been working with all year, it will change both. If it's vertical, it won't change GDP. It will only change price level. This is that monetary neutrality policy or concept we've talked about. 29, determine equilibrium using aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and show the effects on price level and real GDP when equilibrium changes in both directions. Again, this is similar to shifting a single graph. You have to know that when aggregate demand goes up, the price level is going to go up and real GDP is going to go up. Again, the key word is indeterminate, which will happen if there's a double shift. The last thing we have to do is determine the size of the spending multiplier. Spending multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus MPC. MPC is the marginal propensity to consume. So if you were given data, you would say change in income to calculate MPC. You would choose any 2 points of the data, and you would say how much, the denominator is the change in income. The numerator for MPC is change in spending. Again, this will give you a percentage. You can only change your spending by up to the change in income. So let's say you have an additional, let's pretend Trump's stimulus package was 1,000 instead of 1,200. Well, if everyone spent $800 of that 1,000, the MPC would be 80%. 1 minus 0.8 is 0.2. 1 divided by 0.2 is 5. That spending multiplier would be 5. There's plenty of practice problems about the MPC. If you have questions, reach out.